Dear Void, let me tell you a story about an ancient empire who decided to conquer other nations and gorge itself on their blood and their lands. And that empire was called Rome. And for a time, it went very well. Other city-states and kingdoms fell before them, and they enjoyed relative calm and order in their empire. From time to time, there were insignificant rebellions here and there, but those were crushed immediately. Most people they had conquered accepted being now part of the Roman Empire, not just because Rome overwhelmed them with its military might, but also because it had kind of a premium draw to it. If you were born in the Germanic areas or in Gaul, and you came to the great city, the center of the empire, it was like being transported to a different planet. From the culture, the art, the architecture, even the poor areas were impressive to someone who grew up in a hovel in the middle of the forest. And the Romans seemed rich. Slaves were everywhere. Even working class people seemed to sometimes own a slave, even more than one if the patriarch was a veteran of the Roman army. And if their gods gave them all this glory and victory and riches, then their gods must be the real deal, right? So many of the conquered people wanted to be part of Rome, wanted to be viewed as Roman. They knew they would never be viewed as true Romans by the Romans themselves. But they dressed in their clothes and they adopted their customs, pretended as hard as they could. So things went great for this ancient empire. Business was booming, there was stability when they didn't kill each other for political reasons, and the future looked bright. Except for one annoying province. This tiny, peasant, insignificant province called Judea. Right on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean. These Jews. You won't believe it. First of all, these people worshipped only one God. They thought only one God is responsible for everything. War, disease, homelessness, natural disasters, doesn't matter. They only pray to this one God to fix everything for them. Insanity. They even built this one God a great temple in their capital, Jerusalem. And get this, the God is invisible. There's no statue, no image, nothing. And not only that, those barbaric Jews are forbidden from ever making a statue of their God's image. How ridiculous is that? And these people, who are obviously deranged, are nothing but trouble. They keep rebelling. They refuse to worship the emperor in their temple. They refuse to even place the imperial eagle in the temple, as if they are not a province of Rome at all. As if they weren't conquered by the great Pompey Magnus himself. And from time to time, they get a small army going and murder the local Roman authorities in a rebellion. And then the Romans have to send reinforcements to eliminate the rebels, but a few months later, a new rebellion is born. So the Romans saw these Jews as absolute monstrosities. Insane, savage, brutal, uncultured. They didn't recognize anything of value. Not the Roman gods, not Roman superiority. What the hell is wrong with these people? And the cheek. At one point, there's this guy, Yeshu, Jesus as he would become known in the English-speaking world. And some of them seem to think that he is the Messiah, which is the person chosen by their invisible God to be the king of all Jews. That little Jewish shit thinks he's the king of all Jews and not the emperor. Well, the Romans thought, fine then, that's treason, and traitors get crucified. So that's what they did. But like everything else with these Jews, you think you fixed one problem, another one appears. Suddenly you have people who now claim that this Jesus fella had resurrected and that he was actually the son of their invisible God or an incarnation of him or something like that. The point is they are now worshipping him as a god, which the Romans couldn't give two shits about, except that these Jews are now converting Romans into this new religion, this Christianity. Now there are 2 points that are important to remember. First, that the early Christian converts were mostly Romans, And second, that for Romans, a Roman that abandoned their religion is not just a case of personal choice. It's an act of horrible treason that can have real consequences in the real world for all of Rome. See, Romans really did believe in their gods and in their gods favoring them because of their loyalty. If Roman citizens start to worship other gods, if they abandon the gods would abandon Rome. So the persecution of the early Christians is really the Romans shitting themselves and telling the gods, they're not with us. We don't know what happened. We'll fuck them up for you. They're not with us. But as much as they persecuted and killed Christians, there were always more of them. And where did this disease come from? Where else? From the Jews. This is a Jewish religion as far as the Romans are concerned. These Christians are worshipping the Jewish God, or a son of his, or something like that, and they read Jewish text in that weird Hebrew language. And this new Jewish religion is corrupting Rome, corrupting Roman citizens, and it's spreading like a disease. So at this point, the Romans' opinion of Jews is very, very low. Jews are seen as a corrupting element, untrustworthy, brutal, backstabbing, can't appreciate what the good, civilized Romans have done for them, betrayers of the gods. Sounds familiar already? Do you hear the echoes of the past in the hatred of modern days? So in their attempt to put a stop to this Jewish influence once and for all, a stop to all the rebellions, a stop to the troubles from this tiny, insignificant province, during a period of almost a century, the Romans destroyed Judea nearly completely. They burned down Jerusalem, their capital. They burned down the great temple. They murder a third of the population. They enslave and expel another third, which is why some Jews now look European and have Italian markers in their genes. And they change the name of the land. No longer will it be known as Judea, but they revert to an old Greek name of the region, Syria Palestine. And from that moment on, Westerners will use that name, specifically Palestine, to describe the region. Jews, however, will continue using the names Israel, Judea, or Zion. But it doesn't end there. See, the Christians at that point are mostly Roman converts, and they grew up all their lives hearing how the Jews are a corrupting element in Roman society. And now they also know that Jews reject Jesus as the true Messiah or the Son of God or whatever he's supposed to be. What more proof do you need? And then the most bizarre thing in the world happens. As the empire becomes more and more Christian, eventually an emperor converts to Christianity and decides to convert the entire empire. Now, from a Roman point of view, it's only natural that they are the keepers of the faith. After all, it was the Roman gods who chose them, and they were the center of their religion. And now, the Christian God has chosen them, so Rome should become the center of that religion too. Only one problem with that. They murdered him. And that kind of puts a bad turn on the whole we represent God on earth thing. Because the guy you murdered horribly probably doesn't want you to represent him. So another story has to be told. But wait a minute. They already have the perfect villain, the perfect scapegoat. Who is the corrupting element in the empire? The Jews, of course. It doesn't matter that they got that reputation because pagan Romans saw Christianity as a corrupting element, and they believed that Christianity started with Judaism. But even though it makes absolutely no sense now, the Jews are evil trope remains. And the early Christians, who, let's not forget, are Roman converts, doubled down on it. And so the Romans tell another story. Yes, Jesus was murdered by Romans using Roman means, but it was the influence of the evil Jews that made them murder him to begin with. They are the Christ killers. There, the narrative is fixed, Catholicism can get going. And through this religion, all the anti-Semitic tropes that started by the Romans, the Jew as a villain, as a corrupting element, as a person who rebels against God and rejects his word. All of that will be inserted into the religion, and through that religion, into all of European and Western culture, to this very day. All because of one ancient empire who decided to conquer a people they did not understand, that would not bow their head to oppression. Not then, not now.